2024 TIAA Big Ten women's and men's basketball tournaments are headed to Target Center March 6th through the 17th, and tickets are going fast. More info and to purchase tickets, head to KFAN.com, keyword calendar.
Noon from the Bob Kurtz Radio Center. We're still under XL Energy Center. New digs, fresh equipment. It's a beauty, again, of a radio studio led by Kevin Falness. He gets all the toys. And he has allowed me to hang out with him 9 to noon in studio this morning. It's a 1 p.m.-ish puck drop right here on your home for Wild Hockey, The Fan. For you that will be watching it on television, you're going to get to see Kevin Gorg of Bally Sports North in studio with me now at Gorgomatic 21. It is indeed the Gorgomatic, and he's with me. How you doing, Mr. Gorg?
Doing good. Looking forward to the week ahead. 4 tough games for the Minnesota Wild. I listened to both Falness and Russo chat with you earlier, and don't disagree with Kevin on his assessment, where if you can pull out a couple of wins this week, being the underdog, I think, in all 4 games, you put yourself in a position to hang in there and let the schedule lighten up. The Wild are still yet to see the San Jose Sharks. They still get the Ducks a couple of times. They get the Blackhawks again. The last half of the year does set up for a team to make a run, but this is one of those weeks that's just hellacious on paper. And you look at how many games they have left, Nordo, with 28 games. You look at that Western Conference, you kind of figure somewhere in the low 90s gets you in the playoffs in that A spot. So let's just say 92 is that number. Okay, you've got to go 18-10. Doesn't sound crazy daunting, but if you go 0-4 or 1-3 this week, then that changes. That's why 2-2 is so imperative. 18-10, 92 is the number, I think, that probably gets you in. And as I mentioned at the start of this conversation, you've got a lot of very winnable games in the final month and a half. So even going 2-2 this week actually would really help you moving forward. If you can go 3-1 or 4-0, fantastic. But 2-2, I think, is the mark.
Yeah, and this has kind of been the theme. If you were listening earlier, you would have heard like my shock and amazement in some ways with the Canucks coming in town. A team that was so in flux a year ago, and with Russo as well. And I remember it, just not how it kind of went down, or obviously didn't go down, but you know, the Brock Bessers of the world, they were interested in getting phone calls and trying to figure this thing out. They got Bruce Boudreau like, hey, you're fired, but can you stick around for a couple of months? And so that whole thing was ugly, and now they're the toast of the National Hockey League, and it's an impressive turnaround that Rick Tocchet and Mike Yeo have engineered there in Vancouver.
Rick Tocchet likely the favorite for the Jack Adams Award for Coach of the Year. Mike Yeo done a tremendous job kind of behind the scenes. And listen, this is a team that's always had talent. I mean, you look at Quinn Hughes, you look at Elias Pettersson, you look at JT Miller, Brock Besser. This is a team with high-end talent. They're finally getting goaltending. Like, Thatcher Demko's been unbelievable this year, and that swings the needle in this league. There's parity up and down in the National Hockey League. What tends to move the needle the most is the teams that get consistently good goaltending. Minnesota got it last year in the second half of the season. People look at last year, the Wild were not in a great spot. Even this late in the year last year, Philip Gustafson was unbelievable in the final 7 weeks of the year last year, and that got them to eclipse 100 points. So if the Wild are going to have any chance of getting back into that top 8 conversation, it's going to come down to the goaltending. That's what's happened in Vancouver. They're a team that scores almost 3.7 goals per night, 3rd in the league. And when you're getting a goaltending situation from Thatcher Demko where you're giving up 1 or 2 a night, you're going to win more than you lose. And that's why you see the Canucks with the most points currently in the National Hockey League.
How do you think Gus has been playing on our side, though? And, you know, difficult situation there in OT last night, and they end up getting out of there with just a point instead of 2. But overall, how's Gus Bus rolling?
He's been good, but he hasn't been great yet. I haven't seen that run from Gus like we saw last year. He's been good, and his numbers in the last 3 weeks, rock solid. But this is a team that doesn't have a lot of room for error. You know, with the injuries they've had, and now you're missing Jared Spurgeon, you're missing Marcus Foligno, you're missing Pat Maroon. There just isn't a lot of room for error. So even a game like the Buffalo game, where he certainly gave the team a chance to win a hockey game, not good enough. I mean, bottom line is that puck's got to get covered up late in the game. Now, there were other breakdowns. And Minnesota, I thought once Buffalo started to get into that position to pull the goaltender, had done some great things. They disrupted the neutral zone twice, forced a couple of offsides. Buffalo looked disjointed. And then all of a sudden, Minnesota got cute. They started making those long cross-ice passes. And you can't do that in the final 2 minutes of a hockey game. You just can't do it. And John Hines talked with us yesterday at practice. He was extraordinarily disappointed with some of their execution in that sequence. And every point matters for this hockey team. So you can walk away saying, hey, they're 4-0-1 in their last 5. That's a pretty nice run. And it is. But that 1 point that you let Buffalo take out of St. Paul might end up biting you in the end.
Yeah, and that was kind of a weird game on Saturday for me watching it. And I kind of put it this way with the head coach is, they had to survive those 3 penalties in the first. It's almost like the game really didn't start for the Wild in the second period. Now, the penalty kill has been really good for this team. That's sweet. But in the end, like that slow start really put them off kilter from the jump.
It did. And taking penalties is a recipe to give the opposition momentum. And especially with a team like Buffalo, right? Because Buffalo has been helter-skelter. My good buddy, Donnie Granato, is their head coach. And so I watch their games as much as I can. I check their results and, win 7-0 one night, lose 4-0 the next. They're just looking for a reason to go away. And you come out and take 3 penalties in the first period. Number one, you're putting your crowd to sleep. Number two, you're giving that team some offensive juice, some momentum. And now you're playing catch up the rest of the game. And so you allow that game to be a tight game late where you just couldn't put a team away. And then again, looking at that 92 number and trying to get into the Western Conference playoff conversation, you got 1 point out of a possible 4 against Buffalo. That's probably going to, in the end, be a problem for you.
Yeah, and man, 1 out of 4. Yeah, and of course it was Jordan Greenway. Now he doesn't get the goal,
but he's involved.
He was, and frankly, you know what? The goal was stolen from him.
The puck was going in anyway.
It was good. Just let it be. Is it
right.
Cousins? What?
Let it go in.
Yeah,
I suppose it's just a natural reaction, right? You're down there, you're trying to make sure, but we all love Jordan Greenway. I'll tell you, Nordo, one of those guys. I think it's a good situation for him to go to Buffalo and to play for Donnie, a guy he had played for as a teenager down in Michigan at the developmental spot, but just a kid we missed. Like, just that personality. He was just such a fun-loving, great kid. Still lives here in the offseason. It was really hard. When he got moved, it was hard on him. He did not want to leave Minnesota. He loves it here, like a lot of the guys do. So I really wish him well. Not on days like that. I'm hoping we get the better of him and his team. But as far as individuals go, one of my favorite players we've covered.
Are you a UPL guy or are you an Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen guy?
UPL is a lot easier for me. I get tongue-tied sometimes.
Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. That's kind of a fun thing to say.
Ukko-Pekka is cool. It is cool.
And Kevin Falness on the radio side, he kept bailing out on it. He kept saying, UPL. He's
a pro. He knows not to put himself in a tough spot. He's a pro.
Try Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. I think it's worth saying every single time. Now, good night for him overall. He gets the win, but Declan Chisholm finds his way into the net. Kind of a cool story. And I have to be honest, until I saw him on the night, I'm like, who the hell's number 47 out there? What's going on with that? You see the goal, and by all accounts, a terrific debut, at least in a Wild sweater.
A lot of potential there. And so this is one of those moves when you're Bill Guerin and you're financially strapped with the Suter and Parisi thing for another year after this year. That is a sneaky, really good move. We got a chance to get to know him a little bit during the practice time leading up to his debut over the weekend. Really articulate, sharp kid, smart kid, confident kid in the right way. I asked him to kind of tell us about his style of play, and he said, listen, I can skate and I can move the puck. I look up to guys like Chris Letang. I try to play that type of game. And then we asked him about playing on the power play. Brand new team, don't know these guys. Is that something that makes you a little bit nervous? Said, not at all. That's where I'm most comfortable is in power play situations because of my offensive skills. So this kid's got a little savvy to him. And take the goal away, because the goal was awesome, and that's going to give him some real juice, I think, moving forward. But bottom line is he looked the part. He played 14 minutes. He played 2 minutes on the power play, didn't turn the puck over, used his speed and skill to make plays in the defensive zone. And when you're missing a guy like Jared Spurgeon, this is awesome. And then looking forward to next year, which we don't want to do too much Nordo right now, but if you can get Bogosian signed, you've got Declan Chisholm. That's a really nice third pairing. Now you got Spurgeon back with Middleton. You got Brodeen and Faber. I'm going to tell you right now, that is a really nice collection of top 6 on the defensive side of the puck. And so I'm excited. Let's just see what this kid can do. Loved his debut. I heard Falness this morning mention that probably a lot of extra juice going because he's amped up and he wants to play well in his first game. Let's see if he can be consistent. Nights like tonight are going to be a big test for him because he'll be out there at some point against a very dangerous Vancouver team where all 4 of their lines can score goals. Let's make sure this guy can continue to play good, solid defense. We know he's got offensive skill. And then for a young guy to get a goal like that and to have that type of confidence to jolt you a little bit, I think he'll do wonders on that second unit for the power play.
You know, it's covering the team for as long as you have. Stories like Declan Chisholm are super cool. I think the frustrating thing, and you also mentioned it there too, is you need Declan Chisholm to do what he did last night. You're actually going to need him, in fact, to do it again today and beyond because of the cap-strapped existence of the team. So it's like exciting story with Declan Chisholm. How much more excited are you a year from now to be talking about a summer that isn't so financially weary?
Oh, man. I mean, Bill Guerin and his staff have done a great job of keeping this train on the tracks and keeping it going through a really tumultuous season with a bunch of injuries and not a lot of depth because of that. But you page forward to a year and change from now when the Suter and Parisi $15 million is off the books and you look at the money you can spend. You can go out and get 2 stud players. I mean, you can find good players in this league that make $7-8 million a year. I mean, studs. And then you look at the youth of this hockey team. I think for most people that know the game coming into this year, understanding where this team is at, you wanted to see some development from some of the young guys. So Matt Boldy still looks like the guy that scored 30 goals last year. Kaprizov is Kaprizov. But to me, the 2 big shining stars this year are Marco Rossi and Brock Faber. We remember last year, Marco Rossi was left for dead in Iowa, and it didn't look like this thing was going to work out. And there were a lot of pundits calling for Bill Guerin to just cut bait and trade him over the summer. And Bill Guerin kept the faith. And that's been rewarded by a really solid season where he's on pace right now for around 25 goals. And the Brock Faber thing, we got a little taste of it Nordo last year. I think we were all like taking a step back last year watching him into that Dallas series like, oh my God, this guy's good. Like he belongs out there. And then he's taken another giant step where you're talking about the Calder Trophy this year. He's in the conversation. It's him and Bedard as your 2 favorites. If you're a Wild fan and you just take a look at where this thing is going, it's going to be really, really fun. Like, it's going to be exciting, and I hope these young players continue to sparkle. They've got a bunch in the organization right now, top to bottom. And then you look at the goaltending situation. You know, Marc-Andre Fleury, before the year, we thought, wow, this might be it. I'm not certain it is anymore, and I know he loves it here. So I don't expect him to get moved. You've got him and Gus here now. Will they be back next year together? I don't know. At some point, you got to get Wallstead up, but it's a nice problem to have because, as I mentioned, talking about Vancouver and is this sustainable for the Canucks? If you have goaltending in this league and you have just enough talent to compete, you're going to win hockey games. And Minnesota right now is set up in goal with 3 studs. And again, Fleury at the end of his career has put up great numbers this year. It's a really fun conversation to have how that plays out next year.
It's Kevin Gorg, Bally's Sports North at Gorgomatic21. Is it truly... In some ways, is it a coin flip between Faber and Bedard? I know Connor had missed some time, came back maybe 3-4 nights ago, something like that, and instantly got back on the score sheet, I believe. But, you know, with the year that Faber has had, it's not just where he's local, he's one of us, and we absolutely adore him. Like, this is legit. It's him or Bedard for the Calder.
I think it's a conversation because of the time that Connor Bedard missed. Bedard's a remarkable player. At age 18, He's the real deal. He's lived up to all that hype coming into this season with Chicago.
Wow.
So he is, without a doubt, the favorite. And if he plays the rest of the year and stays healthy, he's going to win that award. The fact that Brock Faber's in that conversation, the fact that he is right now second on that pecking order, let's not forget that a year ago at this time, he was playing hockey for the Golden Gophers, and they were having a great year, but none of us thought he'd make the impact he has made on this team this year. He's been their best defenseman, period. That's unbelievable for a guy that's playing his rookie season in the National Hockey League. Aside from the stuff that you see on the ice, and every fan that watches the game can see how damn good Brock Faber is, I got to tell you, I'm way more impressed off the ice. This kid is humble. He's kind. He's good. In every building we go to, someone from the media, whether it's our side or the other team's side, needs time with Brock Faber. He sticks around and does all of that work. I could not be more impressed with who he is away from the rink. On the rink, speaks for itself when you watch him play. This kid's going to be a great player for a long, long time. He's the kind of defenseman you can build around back there. And to think that Bill Guerin was sitting there with Kevin Fiala, and everybody, I mean everybody in the league knew that Bill Guerin could not bring him back. There was no money to pay Kevin Fiala. And he goes to Los Angeles and gets a first-round draft pick. And this guy, it's one of the greatest coups in the history of the National Hockey League, and our guy did it.
Oh, just remember how worn out that thing was. Trade Fiala. Then it was, is it Fiala or Dumba? Like those conversations taking place, exhausting.
Every team knew it, though. They probably couldn't get either one of those guys back if you were going to keep the core of this team together.
Yeah.
And pay them. So, I mean, I don't know how he pulled it off. And I think, I've heard Lou Nanny on with Barrero in the afternoon talk about how if you could go back right now in time, the Kings wouldn't trade straight up Fiala for the guy we got, and we got a first-round draft pick on top of that. It's an amazing move, and the ripple effects will be felt for years here. And to think that Brock Faber, and I had a great chat with Brock yesterday. Today is a next-gen day where a bunch of kids are going to be in the building, right? So I asked him, I said, what was it like for you as a kid to come over here? And he mentioned that when he was just a little guy coming over here, he fell in love with Brent Burns before we had moved on from Brent Burns. And I'm like, have you ever met him? And he's like, no. And he said, I'm so bummed because during the All-Star break, I went somewhere warm and he was at the same place I was, but I was too shy to go up and bother him. I'm like, oh my God, he's just a kid. This kid's just I just laughed so hard. But Brock gets it.
He's wise beyond his years. He was with PA in Charge on Friday morning, and just kind of hearing he's got a cool and a calm nature to him that is impressive.
He does. He's a mature kid. Most importantly, he's a really humble kid. And I think when you have success to this level at an early age, two things can happen, Nordo. Number one, it can go the wrong way. It can go to your head, and you can start to maybe get into some bad habits and maybe think you're too good to keep working. He's not that kid, man. He wants to get better. He wants to win. We've had a couple different conversations after losses, and he is the guy that comes out, talks to the media, and says, you know what? I need to be better. I made mistakes, and that cost us goals, which cost us a hockey game. So, credit to his parents, credit to Bob Motzko and his staff over at the U of M. This kid's been raised the right way. He's going to be a leader. He's going to be a top player for a long, long time in this league, and the Wild are going to be the benefactors. So it's a part of that excitement I have, not only for this year closing out, next year starting healthy, but in a year and a half when this team really has an opportunity to be a cup contender, to have him now in year three, kind of the veteran stud defenseman that you need to anchor that blue line, it's pretty damn cool.
So this popped in my head, and I have a habit when it comes to hockey, Mr. Gorg, of asking really dumb questions. So I'm going to hit you with this. So Connor Bedard, 18 years old, stone cold killer on the ice already, right? Future is bright for Mr. Bedard. Whereas Brock Faber, college route, comes in, it's 10 seconds into OT versus Quinnipiac, basically, and then a week later, he's putting the Christmas colors on. And it got me to thinking like Cale Makar, and I forget, it was either Boston or Boston College maybe. Cale Makar plays there. He's off the ice from the college season. Boom, with the Avs. Now, Cale Makar may be a little more offensively gifted and certainly maybe more productive in that regard than Brock is at this stage. But how much of a rarity is that, where it's, Austin Matthews in Toronto? Like, that kid didn't need 3 years of college or play 3 years of college. He comes to the league, and now he's in the conversation with Ovechkin for scoring immortality, potentially, even though the Leafs always fizzle out in the playoffs, it seems, sadly, if you're a Toronto fan. But how common is that, whether it's Cale Makar, it's Brock? These guys, I mean, if you have a great shot, there are aspects in which you can come in, they'll find a place for you right away. But specifically defensively, having that intuitive nature, the intelligence of the game, keeping up with the speed of the game. I don't care that there's checking in college. It's a hell of a lot heavier a game in the National Hockey League by miles. Like, how common or uncommon is that, where guys like Makar, guys like Brock immediately just flick into that mold and they're there?
It's rare. I mean, college guys normally take some time at the American Hockey League level to get some seasoning. The most rare situation is the Bedard one. It's a great question because how many guys at age 18 can make that move? Go back, if you're a Minnesota fan, to Phil Housley, who went directly from high school into the pros, ended up being a Hall of Famer. You're talking the 1 percentiles, right? The Connor McDavids. Those are the players that maybe don't need that college season. And then take it to the next level, and you mentioned a couple of guys that had success at the college level like Brock Faber. Even going from Division I college hockey at its highest mark, making that transition to the National Hockey League, it's a big gap. The game moves tremendously faster at the NHL level. Most times, those guys get a cup of coffee, go back and forth, but play some time in the American Hockey League. If you can do it seamlessly, that's a different level. That's upper 10 percentile, and that's where Brock Faber is because we got a little taste of it last year, and he played a couple games at the end of the regular season, and I don't think at that point the Wild really had him on the radar for being a playoff component, at least in their top 6. But he played so well in those last couple of games in the regular season. He forced the hand of Dean Evison and that coaching staff at that time. And then he didn't look out of place in that playoff series against Dallas. Frankly, he looked great. I remember one of the games he pulled a puck out of the net, saved a goal for Gustafsson. So yeah, it's been unbelievable to watch the transition of his hockey game, and to think that at the U of M he was just one of the guys on the blue line. It wasn't like he was playing 35 minutes a night for Bob Motzko. They had an unbelievable blue line. There are other players on that blue line like Jackson Lacombe that are now in the National Hockey League, but to come here and play the way he has played, it is, of all the things that have gone on this year, and there's been good, bad, there's been some injuries, there's been some struggle. To me, if you're a Wild fan, if you can leave this year knowing that Brock Faber is going to be an anchor back there and Marco Rossi is actually a top 6 forward in this league, bottom line is paging forward to what the big picture is for this hockey team, at some point making a cup run, those are 2 pretty big steps, and they were needed.
That's why, over the time working with PA, you've become one of my favorite people because you're the elevator, okay?
Try.
There's always positivity. But you've got me so gung-ho on patience. It's just patience.
You have to be.
The money's going to be around the corner. It is not hyperbole. I can't remember, it was Scott somebody a year ago wrote about
Scott Burnside.
It may have been Burnside, but great length about the AHL, the system and the growth and the development of players, that there are brighter days ahead, certainly for this hockey team as these guys get more minutes up at the NHL level and all of that. Get through this week, and you're still chip-chairing a chance at a playoff spot. Don't give up on me now.
No, this year is still right in front of you. And this week, I think, will go a long way into depicting whether Bill Guerin is forced a little bit to sell the pieces that he does have or maybe just kind of keep this thing going. And I think this team's playing well right now. So you look at this week and say, we're 4-1 in our last 5. And if you're going to get Vancouver, why not get them today? Now, they had a 5-game road trip that lasted nearly 10 days out east, came home for 2 games out west in the Pacific, and came all the way back here yesterday, and now they're going to play in a 1 p.m. game here, which is an 11 a.m. game on their clock. Listen, I get that Vancouver's favored. I get on paper they're the better team. This is the perfect day for Minnesota to upset the apple cart, and I think they're going to play a great game. And now you set yourself up. By winning today, you don't no longer think about 2-2. Now you start to think about, hey, we've got one in the bank. Let's go out there and win 3 of these 4. You win 3 of these 4, looking at the schedule after this, and now you can really have a serious playoff conversation. Remember the number, Nordo, 92 points, 28 games to go. They've probably got to go 18-10. It's doable, but this is a really pivotal week.
And it really is. It's just the one spot right now, right? I mean, it feels like Russo mentioned the Kings and kind of up and down, but they've found their stride.
They had room for error, though. And so you're looking at St. Louis. You're looking at Nashville.
Yeah.
You're looking at teams in that category, and you've got games with those teams. You've got a trip to Nashville coming up. You've got 3 games with St. Louis coming up. I mentioned you've got 3 games against the Sharks, who are a doormat. You've got to take care of business, yes, but this thing is doable because of who you play and when you play them. And weeks like this, because you're playing 4 pretty big, Seattle at the end's not a big dog, but you're playing them at the end of this thing on the road, second a back-to-back. You're playing 3 big dogs and then a back-to-back at Seattle. This is one of those weeks where it can get away from you. So today kind of sets the tone for everything that lies ahead this week. You're playing good hockey. Put the disappointment of the Buffalo game behind you. Take advantage of an 11 a.m. game Pacific time for Vancouver and jump them in the first 10 minutes. You're going to have kids running around. It's like Falness' basement in here today.
Yeah.
Kids running around haywire. It'll be nuts in here. Get off to a good start. Let the crowd get into the game and play a solid 60 minutes today to set the tone for the whole week.
I love it. Thank you for joining me today. Love seeing you on TV. Bally Sports North, it's Kevin Gorg. At Gorgomatic 21, Minnesota Wild and the Vancouver Canucks. Puck drop shortly after 1. And final couple of segments next. We're here live at the X, the Bob Kurtz Radio Center. It's Nordo in for Pills
on the Fan.
Segments 9 to noon today. This is kind of cool for a President's Day. Those of you out there working, doing your thing, that's all good. Many at home. Made the commute a lot better, I'll be honest about that. But a matinee hockey game on your home for Wild Hockey, the Fan. Puck drop shortly after 1. You get to hear the pregame on the wider Minnesota Wild radio network. Is that accurate? Good morning, Kevin Falness.
Strong. And by the way, I like the way you give respect to the Bob Kurtz Radio Center. Russo comes down here, he makes fun of the smell. Barrero makes fun of the fact that it's in disarray. Respect that it so richly deserves.
Well, I can understand all great works of art. For instance, like yesterday I was at the Basilica in Minneapolis.
Oh, this is going to be a great comparison.
And you appreciate, I think the Basilica St. Mary in Minneapolis, I think the construction started, let's say it's like 1905, okay, something like that. And there's history involved, and you start learning about all the way that they chose the various granites, the marble, the craftsmanship, all the handcrafted work that went into building a beautiful piece of architecture. And so, but at one point, it was an unfinished product. At one point, you still had to conceptualize in your own head. At one time, you still had to believe that what was on paper would be the finished product. And they nailed it. And that's kind of what I'm seeing in here.
So now, you're seeing a work in progress.
A work in progress. By the way, I've noticed no funk.
No, there's
no funk.
They're full of garbage is what they are. Both Barrero and Russo, who I adore and love both of them. I respect both of them.
It's a little warm in here.
But their opinions, I don't have any control over that. Their opinion of the Bob Kurtz Radio Center is blasphemous because it's a fantastic work of art, and you've given it the respect it deserves.
Yeah, and I appreciate, first of all, part of the reason that I love this is I'm jealous of the tools in which you work with.
Yeah, no, we've been given some good stuff here.
I mean, the soundboard, like the pots move on their own. There's pre-programming in the mix.
I can run this board. People out there don't care unless you're a nerd like me and you like the technology. But I've got this board so I can operate it from anywhere I can get a Wi-Fi signal. You can put me in Guam. If I can get a Wi-Fi signal, I could operate the Minnesota Wild Radio Network from Guam. It's beautiful.
Never been to Guam.
Nor have I. If they have Wi-Fi, I could operate my board from there, though.
Well, that's a little bit of inside baseball from the standpoint. Like I've gotten text messages from Abbott, and I feel bad about it because I've always kind of set myself up like, if you ever need help, Chad, like you're always anxious.
Yeah.
You're always stressed. And that inherently, when you present that in such ways to me, that stresses me out. Mm-hmm. So let me just help. Well, anytime he's taking grenades and he's got to go remote into something, I'm anywhere but in a position to help.
Isn't that funny?
But the ability, when disaster of some sort strikes, to be able to remote, it's a dream for a different day.
It's to dumb it down as much as possible. For TV, there's a cast of 58. On any given night for any given broadcast. For radio, it's down to roughly 4 to 5 people on any given night, home or away. We're doing everything ourselves. I've got the great Alexis Pearson today. I've got some other folks that help out when she's not available and when she's touring the country or out of country doing whatever she's doing. But then there's Tom, there's Joe, there's Halby for home games, and there's me. That's it. That's our group.
And Halvey does a good job too, right?
He's adequate. Yeah, no, he does a great job. Adequate. No, he is. He's awesome. He's stepped up into that role, and he's our guy up in the Al Shaver press box for the home games. So.
I'm kind of glad I got to have Gorg in today. I don't see him as often now, specifically this time of the year, and he's got TV duties going on, of course, but I'm on the optimism train now.
Good, you should be.
And that's where I've been so split with this team. You and I texting, when I text you, it's usually something snarky in relation to whether it's Beyond the Pond and Wild Fan Line. Fan Line after the game today?
There is. Micheletti will join, and we'll be on
remotely.
Right after. Of course, remotely.
Does the grandkid get airtime?
Probably, if he's doing something with the grandkid in the background.
Is he going to hang up on you every break and... Yes. The producer has to call him back?
Yes, that'll be on Brett Blakemore to call back the great Pat Micheletti, because he cannot be bothered to stand on hold.
But it's, for me, it has been frustrating, and there's so many things that the team can help. And you can go down the list of injuries, and in some ways, that in itself could fill a segment. But whether it's the injury situation that exists with the team, it is a very limited situation of flexibility that the general manager in terms of strings, right? Like Declan Chisholm kicks ass. Well, you needed him to because of the lack of options in substitution of that. And so back up against it in so many different ways, but they're still as enamored as you can be with what teams like the Vancouver Canucks are doing. You are still close. You are still at the doorstep. And I've been curious all season how Wild fans deal with that. I mentioned it earlier. Wild fans that are buddies of mine, I'm getting texts, sell it off, fire everybody. One night I'm getting, okay, this is pretty damn good. I kind of see what's happening here. Let's hold strong. The next night, and that ebb and flow has kind of it's brought a very uneasy picture of the thing to me.
Yeah,
but now Gorg's got me all in.
And if you want the other side of that, chat with Micheletti on any given Saturday about Beyond the Pond, and I'm sure we'll get into it again today on Wild Fan Line. He says this team is dead and buried. They can't surmount what's in front of them. I'm saying it might not happen. It's possible they will fall short, but there's no reason to think that it can't happen. They enter today 4 points back of the 8th and final playoff spot, and look at the teams that they're battling with. Calgary, Seattle, Nashville, St. Louis. Which one of those teams scare you? Now, the Wild don't scare any one of those teams, but I'm not. The Blues, really? The Nashville Predators? Ick. Flames? Kraken? I mean, seriously. So it's all in front of the Wild. They get through this week, and again, if they go 500 in these 4 games, they set themselves up for a real nice finish to the end of the regular season. Now, is it going to be done? I don't know. Can it be done? Hell yes.
How much, post-trade deadline and all of that, how much do you see in the NHL in terms of drifting, where a team... I was going to make the joke earlier with Micheletti, like, who's better at Mullet Arena, the Coyotes or Arizona State?
Yeah.
How much of that do you see on a year-to-year basis in the NHL where it's like, if you put these guys to bed in the first period, it's absolutely over. They're just playing out the string to go get some rounds of golf in this summer.
By the way, when the Wild were in Arizona, and then I'll get to your question, the Wild played in front of the Coyotes at Mullet Arena in front of 5,000 people. The PWHL Minnesota team was playing here in front of 6,200 the exact same night.
Oh, I love that.
If that doesn't put it into perspective, and the PWHL is doing a great job, but that's an NHL team playing in what's supposed to be an NHL market in front of 5,000 fans, and most of them were Wild fans. You heard it after every goal, after every moment, every whistle. It was all Wild, pro Wild. So anyway, what was your question about drifting?
Well, just how much do teams tail off? I mean, is there a pack-it-in vibe with some of these teams that are out there?
I think Arizona's there right now. Absolutely. For sure that's going to happen. Anaheim, San Jose, you think they're going tooth and nail? The adequate Zach Halverson. The Chicago Blackhawks, despite now they got Connor Bedard back, and he's trying to reclaim his throne and I heard you talking to Gorgie about the rookie.
I mean, it's kind of got to be Bedard if he's...
I mean, I assume so. It's too bad because what Faber has done to build up that equity, he deserves to be not only in that conversation, but he should be the guy to beat now. But like Russo and Joe Smith talk about, not everybody watches everybody else in the league. And Bedard's got such a PR machine behind him now. It's probably his to lose. And he's got 3 points in the 2 games since returning from injury, so it's probably tough for Faber to come away with it. But my God, he deserves it, because not only what he's done statistically, well, think of where this team would be. They lose Jared Spurgeon for the year. They don't miss a beat because of Faber. They lose Brodeen for big chunks of the season. They don't miss a beat because of Faber. So he deserves more than just a little runner-up mention.
No, I agree with you there. But again, the way I framed it up with Gorg is I'm an outsider on this. Whether it's the Kevin Falnesses of the world, it's the Adequate Zacks. You guys know more about this than I do from the standpoint, like, I'm so just kind of blown away, in awe, again, hyperbolic, but all the same, for him to emerge from college the way that he did. And it's, Bedard, he's straight out of the gates. He's superstar level.
He's the next chosen one. And
Austin
he is.
Matthews and McDavid, these guys that were super young and immediately found their way, putting 30 in the net a season and beyond, 60 plus for guys like Matthews and McDavid's insane. But then there's, the Cale Makars, and I know that's super high level. He's already gotten a fat deal. There are probably people out like, should we sign Brock Faber to a 5 or a 6 year deal before he finds his shot? You know what I mean? So it's like, it's so impressive and it's super uncommon. And I don't think there's enough ways that you can kind of celebrate what the Wild have in him right now.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. Jeez.
How you doing, Zach?
Did we get a kick in the exhaust there? There are people that saw this coming. Bob Motzko was one of them. Micheletti had him in the Hall of Fame before he ever stepped on an NHL sheet of ice. So there were people that have to
that
give
was
the credit.
That was half what's on the sweater and half production.
100%. But I'm telling you, he was more than just selling hope about what Faber was going to be about, even before he was a Wild prospect, when he was still part of the Kings organization. But, I mean, he's lived up to the hype and then some. And again, you can't put enough on what this team would be without Brock Faber because of, again, no Jared Spurgeon, no Jonas Brodeen. Your blue line doesn't miss a beat because he's able to fill in that role and gobble up 30 minutes of ice time a night. It's incredible what he's done at such a young, impressionable age.
What we're going to do, we're going to pause, come back, a couple of minutes on the back end of this, and put a wrap on things from the Bob Kurtz Radio Center here at XL Energy Center. And we're walking you up. You'll get an hour of the Grum. You're going to get an hour of Dan Cole, the Common Man, from noon to 1, and then puck drops shortly after 1. It's a President's Day matinee, Wild hosting the Vancouver Canucks. Final segment, 9 to noon.
KFAN, the Fan.
Kurtz Radio Center in the bowels of XL Energy Center. It's Nordo in for PA, and this week it'll be a little bit topsy-turvy. PA's he's out seeing the baby girl, so he's out today, but he'll be back tomorrow. He's going to be broadcasting live from KO, and then I believe he's traveling home on Wednesday, so I will be hosting for him at that point as well, and then back Thursday, full strength, as they say. And KOA tomorrow, he's efforting. I know it'd be cool to have in studio. We had an interview with him a week or two ago, may have been last week. Sadly, this time of the year, some of these days blend together. But Dalton Reisner, soon to be free agent for the Minnesota Vikings. And kind of talking about it earlier, Brett putting Vikes Bites together, really appreciative of him for doing that. The fact is we keep talking in scenarios. We keep talking out the ifs. And at some point, I'm just kind of throwing my hands up here and I'm just saying, let something happen. Let a domino fall. And the opportunity, if Dalton Reisner is able to come into studio there at KOA in Denver, kind of get his vibe in terms of other needs that need to be addressed, all of the focus that exists, and in many ways, rightly so, with Kirk Cousins and Justin Jefferson and Neil Hunter. What are we going to do at left guard? Team trades away Ezra Cleveland. Dalton Reisner, whether it was last week, and if you get the chance to hear him tomorrow, this guy loved the opportunity. Cast aside by the Denver Broncos, they bring in Ben Powers from the Ravens, and then you have a situation where he's on the street until September. So part of the match was made in need, our need and his need for a job. and now he's a free agent again. So what happens with him? Looking forward, hopefully, to the chance to hear from him tomorrow. But as we continue on addressing all of the needs as it pertains to the Purple, while eventually seeing an actual domino fall, a contract, this guy leaves, this guy stays, something tangible and substantial to sink our teeth into. Thank you so much, whether it was Adequate Zach Halverson hanging out in studio last couple of segments with me, just being really a cheerleader more of sorts. Kevin Falness for joining me, Pat Micheletti, Michael Russo, Kevin Gorg, John Hines joining during the first hour, Brett Blakemore producing. And go Wild, 1 p.m.-ish, puck drop right here on your home for Wild Hockey, The Fan. The Grum is next. Take care.
Podcast today's back to previous show and interviews by going to the